is $200,500. And for our PACE budget forecast, we're at 104% of that. So we've received a little more income than we had forecasted. We'll be getting that second check from the county that John brought up. It'll be about $45,000, and we should get that in August. So sometime soon here, we'll get that. It'll be positive. Our administrative expenses, our annual budget for that was $90,000. Our year-to-date expenses on administrative, including attorneys, is $31,000. And we're running at 70% of our PACE budget, our expectations. So our spending is lower than what we had expected. Plant harvesting, the budget is $59,000. Year-to-date spending is $26,000. So we're 3/4 of the way of our forecast. We still have 6 weeks left on our harvesting. Weed and water control is, our budget was $13,000. The year-to-date is $8,000, and that one's slightly past our forecast. We haven't dipped into any of the contingency, and we haven't done any capital purchase. So our total expenses year-to-date are $65,000 versus a budget of $200,000. So we're gonna see some more expenses come in for August and September. Our equipment, so that's our current financials.
Any questions? Did I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Stein. Second? Yes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm gonna make everybody write the names on it again. All right, real quick, now we're gonna have our illustrious body plant harvest commissioner give us a report for the year.
All right, every 5 years, we have to renew our harvesting permit for DNR, and that has to start way back in November 1st of last year, which we did. We received our permit 2 weeks ago. Thanks to Lisa, who has helped me out tremendously in badgering the DNR to get this passed and get it through. And as I said, it finally came through 2 weeks ago. Lake and Pond, who has had to do the lake survey on aquatic plants for us in order to achieve this permit, has submitted it to the DNR way back, and also because they did the survey last summer. And they did not approve it to them, so we don't have their written report yet because it had to be approved by the DNR. Since we've got our permit, I'm going to contact them soon and say, okay, they've given us the permit, you should be able to give us a report, so hopefully that'll come through. The important part is that the DNR accepted it, so we could get our permit. So we're good to go for 4 more summers because we've done this summer, which is the first year of our permit, which we just got. The harvesting has been a little low this summer for a couple of reasons. One, the growth has been down because of the weather that we've had during this week. We also lost one of our operators in midsummer, so we've been working underemployed, and we have been unable to get anybody to fill that position. We will be harvesting through September, so you can still put your weeds on the pier, and they will hopefully be picked up by the end of September, which we'll take out. We didn't have any major problems with our equipment this year, which was good. I think we've had some repair, but with the truck, which we're discussing about a new one on that. Other than that, things have gone pretty well according to plan. Any questions that I can or cannot answer? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to call on Attorney Mike Bauer to let us know. He will start out where we started in all this and tell us where we are and what's happening, maybe where we're going.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Bauer. I'm with the Sheboygan Law Firm of Popham and Humke. I'd like to give you just a brief summary of what has gone on with the hotel conditional use permit application, and then answer questions if you have any. hotel conditional use permit application started first with a public hearing before the Walworth County Zoning Agency in October of 2020. After that public hearing, the zoning agency voted to deny the conditional use permit. Unfortunately, they just didn't put in the right language in their decision. The developer appealed that decision, and on March 16th, 2022, Judge Bretland overturned the county's decision. Overturned that decision, basically sending it back or remanding it back to the county zoning agency. So the county had a second public hearing on May 19th, 2022. There was testimony given by the developer and the developer's engineer that basically said the 63-year-old well for that proposed development would be adequate. There was testimony from the district's geologist that well would not or could not be known whether it was going to be safe and whether it would have any negative impact on the lake or have a negative impact on surrounding wells. At the conclusion of that second public hearing, the zoning members had a list of questions. About the well, about the septic system, about the traffic, and pushed off the decision till the month of June. Well, at that point, this is early June 2022, the planning department contacted the developer and asked for additional information. The district also submitted additional information to answer those zoning agency members' questions. The unfortunate part is Corporation Council allowed the developer's response, but didn't allow the district's response. And we believe those developers' responses were inaccurate and provided bad advice to the zoning agency. So on June 15th, 2022, without any real findings or conclusions, the zoning agency now approved the conditional use permit application. So the developer is now authorized to proceed with building a 60-room hotel. On July 27th, the district commenced an appeal. And so we have the current zoning agency decision pending on appeal, and it is in the same judge's courtroom, court system. So at this point, we see there being two issues. One, the fairness of the process by allowing the developer to provide additional information and excluding information from the district is just simply not fair. Second of all, the information that was given to the zoning agency was not accurate. Essentially, they were arguing we can't make any conditions about the well. We can't do a well inspection. We can't do an environmental impact statement. We can't do anything. And quite frankly, that's just flat out wrong. But that information came from the developer. Well, of course, the developer wants the project to move forward. And so we think with our engineers' input, a pump test on the 63-year-old well would be critical to be able to understand whether this can be done safely, whether the hotel and the well can be done safely without impacting Lake Beulah or impacting the surrounding neighbors. The second recommendation that was incredibly important was an inspection of the well. The existing 63-year-old well, nobody knows if it's in compliance with current DNR well standards. Nobody knows if it's contaminating the aquifer that would be drawn on for Lake Beulah. So that's what we're asking now. That's the appeal that's pending. At this point, I would, and the appeal has just started. The county has just filed its general answer. So the next proceeding would be waiting for a scheduling conference. You can see the last round of litigation took about 18 months. There's just nothing in the legal system that moves fast. And so I wouldn't expect a decision in the near future. This is just going to take a normal process. So with that, I would be happy to answer questions.
Now's your chance. John?
3 questions.
I'll give you one at a time.
Okay,
Take your best shot.
all right. Have you explained or gone over how Act 67 applies to this project? And that if you use Act 67, that the developer or the applicant, isn't he required to make sure that anything he does there meets current state, federal, local ordinances and laws?
Act 67 was a huge change in the zoning process. Essentially, it says, if the developer can satisfy all of the county's ordinance requirements, or the additional conditions placed on the developer by the zoning agency, then the zoning agency must approve the permit. The critical distinction though, and the critical error that the zoning agency didn't take up, is they didn't make any findings of fact. They didn't make a determination whether the developer's proposal actually complies with the current Walworth County zoning ordinances, and it failed to make the additional conditions, pump test, well inspection, which it could have in order to ensure that this development was safe for the public.
I'm going back here, a question. Tom?
One of the things you alluded to was in response to recommendation to do an environmental impact study or assessment, and you alluded to the fact that they came back and said that that was something that could be done.
Right, the county planning department asked the developer if they would be willing to do any of these things. And the developer just simply said, no, we don't want to do it.
And it just stopped.
And it just stopped there. Whereas the county zoning agency could have demanded that they actually do those things.
Wow. Okay.
As part of the overall overview that you're looking at is a traffic study included, and is the septic or the pumping of waste materials, is that also being addressed? And the third one is the well, since that'll be theoretically a 60 or whatever, that well, at least in my basic opinion, not being an expert, would have to be a high capacity well. Do we know whether we can even handle that type of volume?
Without overturning the current decision, those conditions have not been placed on this development by the county zoning agency. Again, that's why we feel it's so critical to overturn the existing decision and force the zoning agency to go back through this process and put on these important safety conditions on the development.
Anyone else back there have another question? Anyone else have a question? You have another one, John?
Yeah. I don't want a hotel on Lake Beulah. I'm not a fan of it. Has anybody from the management district tried to reaching out to the developer to see if there could be a better use of that land? Maybe somewhere where the public will still have access, like a small bar, small restaurant, and small hall? Does that pop in?
Yes, please.
The Lake Management District is not in the business of working out what should or should not be put into a development. As far as the hidden innuendo that maybe some condos would be nicer, condos are not allowed under current zoning. If someone wants condos there, they have to change the zoning. That's again, out of our purview. Only the town and the county have anything to say about the zoning. We are not, our job is not to promote or recommend or start projects. We comment on as to their damage to the lake and the various aquifers that feed it. Are you gonna add anything to that?
No, I think that's very appropriate. That's,
Any other comments? And now's the time to get them. If there's a little something in your mind, ask it. How long, you said it could be 18 months before the next.
that's what the last one took. No way to know.
Susan?
If the matter goes back to the zoning agency, what, is there a mandate that they have to review this again or put in any further requirements, or can they just treat it as they did this time?
Again, process would start over. And again, with further guidance from the circuit court,
if we do go back and get it sent back to the county, the town would have its opportunity to go back and, someone talked about pumping, the septic system and traffic studies and the road, they were totally ignored. But for whatever reason, they chose not to join us, but they certainly wouldn't be, it would be open to start the process again, and I'm sure the town, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but I'm sure the town will want to jump in again and say, hey, we've got roads to protect, and we've got, septic systems, et cetera. So, question, Mark?
What's the standard for review?
What's the standard for here?
What were they looking at?
Well, they wanna make sure that the, agency followed the right theory of law, that its decision wasn't arbitrary, make sure that there are substantial facts in the record to support the decision. This four stands are, essentially there is a standard of review that the court is looking for.
Keep in mind, we don't really expect to turn this down because a hotel is allowable under conditions. We only want to make sure that the correct conditions are in the permit so that they have to protect, again, the well, the septic systems, everything else that goes into it. And now, one comment that John brought up, and I'll stop and let you have it. Doesn't the developer have to follow all the laws and regulations? Sure they do, all the standard boilerplate that's out there, but that doesn't talk about the special conditions, and that's what the law wants, is for to put the conditions on there that protect the community and protect, in this case, Lakeview.
I think that's one of the changes in Act 67 enacted throughout the state, that it changed the onus of denying an approved conditional use from the developer onto the local community. And that's why I think it's unfair for the county to disallow the local community's input into the conditional use.
And to be fair, yeah, everybody is working with this new law. The county zoning agency, corporation council, everybody's working with this new law, and there isn't any other case law developed to provide guidance to the county. So it's difficult, but we're here to help them.
I just got a question. It sounds like a lot of people don't want a hotel, and that condo, if somebody did decide to try and revisit this thing with a realistic development with condos, we should have to go back to the county, and we completely rezone and completely start over from scratch. That's probably a long struggle itself too, right?
That would also be completely starting over.
And a long way. Now, again, that's town and the county. We have nothing to do with that.
And most of the zoning districts along the lake are R1, which is single-family residences. There's a little B3 waterfront business districts that are part of the lake, and conservation districts. But nowhere on the lake are there multifamily zoning districts, which a condo would require. And it's a drastic change in the environment along the lake shore.
Aside from a hotel potential, is that property zoned for anything other than condos? You know, the argument of a condo, houses? What else would be?
It's a B3, it's a small lakeside business.
So just business, like a few houses or something?
And again, the hotel with a conditional use permit.
John, you got another question?
Yeah, I understand the goal is to protect the lake, and that's number one, that's important. But is there a way to kind of avoid all the litigious type of behavior where we're suing and stretching things out for 18 months in a crack? Is there a way the developer and maybe the town and the management district could sit down and just have like a face-to-face conversation and say, hey, we want you to do this, we want you to do that, and then maybe we could stop all the litigation, because the litigation costs all of us money. And I understand it needs to be done to protect the lake, but isn't there a better vehicle or way to do this?
Anytime you're in litigation, the two parties, the plaintiffs and the defendant, have the ability to try and settle the case. But at this point, it really takes willingness on both sides to make movement. And as far as we know, the developer has not been interested in a pump test or well inspection or anything that we really need to ensure the safety. So one side can't create the settlement, meaning the Lake Bueller management side just can't create it.
Well, are there
So
checks
Well,
and
John,
balances?
From the management district's point of view, we have no enforcement power, we have no voice in zoning. It can't start with us, it has to start with the town.
Are
And
there,
then you can ask the management district if they have an opinion on something, but we're in no position to sit there and say, well, yeah, we'll talk, we have no authority to,
are there checks and balances that can be put in place to make sure that, hey, if we do have a well on this property, it's gonna meet all the current state and federal DNR
that's exactly what we're trying to get them to do,
Right, but
John.
isn't there a way we can do it without having to spend 18 months at a time and all this litigation, all this money?
we asked the county zoning agency to place these conditions on the permit. We did exactly what you're suggesting. We asked for their help, and they simply ignored us. The county zoning agency ignored the request.
Are there any other questions? Well, it's costing you money to have this man stand up here
Money's no object.
and we do appreciate you coming, Mike, and you've been very excellent at explaining the situation. I hope,